Can we count this? I don't know if we can count this. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am wrapping up all of the books that I put on my autumn TBR this year. This year I have got a little bit of something extra involved where if I haven't read at least 75% of the books on the list, I have to do a forfeit. I have no idea still yet what that forfeit is because I've actually managed to read 75% of every TBR that I've made. So let's see if we can continue with that or if I need to actually start thinking of something to do. Let's start with some bad news. I have got a DNF on the list. I DNF'd Hamlet. I know this is so many people's favorite book. I know that this is such a YouTube darling. I know that there are so many people out there who absolutely adore this. And to be honest, I thought that I would be one of those as well. I read Hamlet when I was in school and I absolutely adored it. It's my favorite Shakespearean play, but I don't know what it was about this. There was just something that never drew me in. And this is the third time that I had tried Hamlet. I did give it another try at the start of this year, and I did give it another try last year as a Kindle book, and it just never caught me. I think I got to about 100, 115 pages when I just knew I was struggling. I wasn't going to pick it up as much as I would with any other book. Or when I was reading it, I was just slogging through it, going through all the motions, just turning pages quickly so that I could say that I had gotten it finished. And I am of the opinion that you should DNF a book if you're not enjoying it. I am of the opinion that life is too short to read a book that you're not enjoying. So I knew that it was time to say goodbye. But one that I did read is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. I read this as part of Rom-Comathon, the readathon that I hosted where we just read romance books for a week. And I don't think I should have put that on this romance TBR because this isn't a romance book. It's more so kind of a coming of age story following Grace, who has just qualified with her PhD. She's done her FIVA, she's done everything, and she has gone to Vegas to celebrate. And while she is there, gets married drunkenly to a girl that she has never met before. They wake up the next morning and they realize that there's a ring on their finger, they've got a marriage license, and they've done all that. I really liked that relationship between Grace and Yuki. I really thought that it was very cute. It was well written. They kind of discovered more about each other as the book goes on. Obviously, they go from kind of complete strangers to married. And I really enjoyed that kind of atmosphere of getting to know them as they were getting to know each other as well. It kind of made me feel like I was part of that getting to know each other stage. Something else about this book is that it has quite a lot of really good representation. Not only is Grace LGBT, not only is Yuki LGBT, but also Grace is Black, Yuki is Asian, and there is quite a lot of discussions about the discrimination that they will have gone through both in their personal lives, in the workplace, and I don't want to say enjoyed, but it was very eye-opening to see quite a lot of that brought to life. There are quite a lot of discussions of Grace now looking for jobs after she has gotten her PhD and basically being cast to the side because of the colour of her skin. And I absolutely hated reading that, but I do know that it's entirely realistic. And it would be remiss of me to say that things like this don't happen because of course they do. And it was really well portrayed, and you can tell that this is something that has affected Morgan Rogers personally. You can tell that this is something that she is tired of, and it really came through on the pages of the book. There were, however, a couple of things that did confuse me about this book. I would have loved to see a bit more of the night that Yuki and Grace met. I feel like we weren't really brought into that side of their relationship a whole lot. We just knew that they woke up the next morning and that they had gotten married, and now they have to figure out each other, figure out their place in each other's lives. I really wish that we had been brought back to that night in Vegas where they first met, where they got to know each other over a couple of margaritas, where the idea to get married was planted in their heads and why they did it and where and when. I really wish that we had seen a bit more of that. Something else that weirdly confused me is Grace's father. His name is Colonel in the book, but I don't know if that's because his name was Colonel or if he is an actual colonel in the army and they refer to him as like a weird mark of respect. I didn't always love the relationship between Grace and her father. It always felt very authoritative. It felt very kind of strained. And there were a couple of instances where I was kind of reading it and cowering a little bit. There was just a kind of coldness between the two of them, and I really would have loved to have seen that ironed out a little bit. Something else that kind of tripped me up about this book is that there are a lot of flashbacks that I don't really feel were very heavily laid out. Sometimes you were in a completely different timeline, a completely different place, and I never really knew where I was, when I was, what kind of a situation we were in, and why it was relevant to the story now. I really wish that that had just been laid out a little bit better and a little bit clearer, and then I would have known where I was going and why I was there. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this book. It is, like I said, not a romance. It's more so a kind of a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story. So if that is more of the vibe of what you're looking for, then definitely go and pick this one up. Next was probably my Everest when it came to this TBR, because I didn't know if I was going to actually tick it off or not, but I did it. I read Matilda in German, cover to cover, and survived to tell the tale. I actually did a whole video about the situation, about my progress with it, about how I struggled or not struggled with the book. I don't really need to tell you about how the story of Matilda goes. We all know the story of Matilda, whether we're more familiar with the book or we're more familiar with the movie or the stage adaptation. However you've experienced Matilda, I'm sure you know what it's about. But the main thing for me was that I knew the story so well, that I was so connected with the characters, with the world. All I had to do was just read the book. I just had to take in the language, the sentence structure, the verbs that were used, the tense that it was used in, even though the tense it's written in, which is kind of like the Pluquamperfekt, I think it's called. It's kind of a weird version of the past tense that's not used in traditionally spoken German. It gave me an idea of what the sentences were, how to lay sentences out, and if I didn't recognize a verb, then I could have gone and looked it up and gotten the present form and then been able to conjugate it from there. I did make a couple of notes as I was going through the book. There are a couple of places where I, for example, have highlighted something or written down what it meant. But overall, I understood this book so much more than I was expecting to. And I think it's given me another deeper level of love for Matilda Wormwood. Next on the list was Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, which was the second book in the Bright Fall series. I absolutely adored Delilah Green. It's probably one of my top books of the year for this year. So I had some very high hopes going into Astrid Parker. I didn't love Astrid throughout some of the first book, but I don't think we were supposed to. I think that was just how Astrid's character was. She was figuring out a lot of things about herself. She was going through quite a tumultuous time in her relationship. But I'm glad to say I got on with her so much better in this book than I did in the first one. This book does follow Astrid Parker, who has left her relationship, she's left her engagement, and now it's a year later and she's kind of building her life for herself and really concentrating on her career. This means that she is going to be one of the designers on Inside America, which is kind of like a hotel renovations program. She is teamed up with Jordan, who is the granddaughter of a hotel in the local area, and they're kind of put together to renovate this B&B, bring it back to life, and of course they clash on almost everything. They have got completely different design tastes, they've got completely different ideas of how the rooms should look, they have got completely opposite ideas for literally everything. But you know what they say, opposites tend to attract, and throughout the book you can see Astrid and Jordan coming together a lot closer, professionally and personally. I really enjoyed this book about somebody who is discovering and coming to terms with their sexuality a little bit later in life. I know so many people for whom they only kind of came to terms with their sexuality in their late 20s or early 30s. So this is definitely something that so many people are going to find solace in. There were a couple of weird moments for me in this book. There felt like a very kind of a juttering transition from one of their friends getting a quite important phone call and a quite big phone call in their lives to a sex scene between Jordan and Astrid. It just felt a little bit out of place, and I don't know if it would have been placed better later on in the story. But overall, the sex scenes that were in this book were well written, they were very steamy, they were very much up my street, and I really enjoyed reading them. There were a couple of things that I just didn't enjoy this one as much as I did Delilah Green. I don't know if it was because of some of the characters. I don't know if it was because of some of the decisions that had been made by some of the characters. Astrid's mother really knocks it up another level in this book. If you thought she was unhinged before, you are absolutely going to think she's out of her mind this time. And there were a couple of things that she did that I really just didn't gel with at all, between sending Astrid a paper clipping of her ex-fiance's new engagement, for example, or some of her actions toward the end of the book. And I am kind of glad with how that relationship ended out. I'm kind of glad that they're taking a step back from each other and that they're kind of just coming to terms with each other's place in their lives and seeing where they want to go from there. I know that that is something a lot of people will have experienced and are going through. So that is, again, something that some people are going to find solace in this book for. I know that Iris, who is Astrid and Delilah's friend, is going to get a book of her own, and I am so excited to see what they do with Iris, especially because of how her storyline was in this book. Iris had a bit more of a storyline in this book than she did in Delilah Green. And I was really excited to see where that was going because it felt a little bit exciting to read it. So I'm quite intrigued to see where we're going to go this time. Next are two books that you would have seen me talking about in my most recent Book Nabrew video, so you can go and check out more of my in-depth feelings on that one. So I'm just going to go through them a little bit quicker here. First one up was The XX by Erin Sterling, which I really enjoyed. This is kind of a small town cozy vibe, but got a little bit of steam in it. If you enjoyed Hocus Pocus, if you enjoyed Sabrina the Teenage Witch, if you enjoyed Gilmore Girls, this is absolutely the book for you. It is about Vivi, who 9 years ago was in a short-term relationship with a guy called Reese, who it turned out was betrothed to someone else. Vivi is completely heartbroken by this development and puts a hex on Reese that his life is going to go completely in the shitter. She's using a candle from like Body Works or Bed Bath & Beyond or one of those like dollar stores in America. So she doesn't think that it's going to be as effective as it turns out to be, but it turns out that Reese's life has been going pretty badly recently. However, he has got to come back to Glens Grove because his family is also of a magical family and their magic is starting to wane, so he has got to go and recharge the power lines so that everything is going to kind of boost again. Vivi and Reese run into each other again and kind of pick up where they left off. This has got really great family relationships. It's got a phenomenal relationship between Vivi and her cousin Gwen. I loved reading that part as somebody who's also quite close to her female cousins of the same age. It also has a talking cat, which I feel like more books need to have. More books need to have cats, and more books also need to have cats that talk in them. But also something that I was a little bit concerned about and a little bit worried about was that Reese is Welsh. I'm very familiar with Welsh culture. I've lived in Wales, so I was a little bit worried that maybe that would be a little bit made a caricature, a little bit stereotyped, but thankfully none such thing happened. Everything was above board. It was a really great book. They even pronounced Samhain right in the audiobook, which I listened to for the last 10 or 15 chapters while I was at work. I have got a copy of The Kiss Curse, which is the second book in the series, and it follows Gwen. So over Halloween weekend felt like the perfect time to go and pick that up. Final book on the list was Lying in Wait, which I have had on my shelf for about 2 years now. I was also recommended to read this in my 15 Before 30 book, so technically I should have read this last Halloween, but I didn't. I absolutely adore Liz Nugent's writing. She is so atmospheric. She really drives you into the story. She has got a phenomenal storytelling work in her. So I knew that when I picked this up, I was going to just be enthralled. I made sure that it was a day I was doing absolutely nothing because I knew once I picked this book up and once I really got into the meat and bones of it, I wasn't going to want to put this down. And I was completely correct. Liz had me hooked right from the first sentence. My husband didn't mean to kill Annie Doyle, but the lying tramp deserved it. When you go through this book, then you realise why Annie Doyle was a lying tramp, why this woman's husband killed Annie Doyle, and all of the implications that have come from there. So what does that mean for Lydia, her husband, and her family? What does that mean for Annie's family? And also why there's a kind of an overlap between Lydia and Annie's families. I never expected to see half of the things that happen in this book, but I should have known that, because Liz kind of likes to take you down a road, spin you around, and then send you down another path that you had never seen at the side. Her endings completely blow you away, and even when you think you've gotten the book figured out, and you think you know where you're going, and you think you've got all of these clues put together in your head, something completely out of the blue happens. It will drag you right down another way. And I wonder, if I go back and read this again, am I going to pick up on anything? Is there going to be anything that will just give me a hint of what's about to happen? But honestly, I think she will just blindside me again every time. Those are the books that I put on my TBR for autumn, and I actually managed 81% of them. If I had finished Hamlet, it would have been 100%, and I don't think I'm going to count the 115 or so pages of it. I would say that I have ticked off my autumn TBR. What was your favorite book that you read this autumn? Let us know in the comments, because I would love to get some more recommendations. If you would like to leave a comment but you can't think of anything to say, then just leave me the autumnal leaves. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.